Let me tell you something. Sometimes the most powerful truth does not come from a victory speech, but from an admission we made a mistake. Now, recently, the White House itself had to come forward and admit just that in the midst of Donald Trump's ongoing trade war, they got it wrong, and not just a little wrong. We're talking about tariffs stacked on top of tariffs, doubled on goods from Japan, until families, businesses, and ordinary people are staring at price tags that don't even make sense. 40–50% increases on everyday items, not because of the market, not because of scarcity, but because of mismanagement. And you know what? That kind of mistake is costly. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's the father who wonders if his paycheck will stretch far enough to cover the rising price of tools for his job. It's the mother in the grocery aisle doing the math on her phone, realizing that the cost of something as simple as school supplies has gone up yet again. These are not abstract consequences. They are real, human, and heavy. But here's what I know. A mistake can be a teacher. A mistake can wake us up. And when power admits it has erred, that's not just a headline. That is a mirror showing us how fragile decisions at the top can be, and how deeply they reach into the lives of people at the bottom. Now, some will say, well, that's politics. But I want you to hear me. Politics is never just politics when it touches the dinner table, when it shakes the family budget, when it interrupts the dream of sending a child to college. Every policy, every decision, every tariff, every trade war, it is about people, about you, about me, about all of us trying to live with dignity and hope. And in this moment, as the White House admits to a major misstep, we are being called to see the bigger truth, that mistakes made in haste or made in ego can cost a nation far more than money. They can cost trust. They can cost faith in leadership. They can even cost us the very unity we need to get through hard times. But let me remind you, and this is important, a mistake does not have to be the end. A mistake can be a beginning. Because when something cracks open, the light can come through. When something breaks down, you get a chance to build it better. And if the people in power can admit they got it wrong, then maybe the rest of us can take that same courage into our own lives. Maybe we can look at the places we've stumbled, the choices we regret, the plans that didn't work out, and instead of hiding them away, we can say, yes, I made a mistake, but I am not the mistake. I can rise from this. Because here's what life has taught me. Resilience is not born in success. It is born in struggle. It is born in those moments when you thought you were walking the right path, only to realize you've been going in circles. It is born in the courage to turn around and choose differently. And so as we watch leaders on the world stage fumble and confess, let us not just point fingers. Let us ask ourselves, what will I do with the mistakes in my own life? Will I let them define me or refine me? Will I let them destroy me or direct me? The truth is, whether it's a tariff gone wrong or a dream that fell apart, the power of a mistake is not in its pain, it's in what it teaches. So tonight I want you to lean in and remember this, even in the halls of the White House, where decisions carry the weight of a nation, mistakes happen, and if they can admit it, so can we. If they can begin again, so can we. This moment is not just about trade wars and politics, it is about waking up to the responsibility of our choices, the impact of our decisions, and the resilience that lives inside each of us. Because no matter the tariffs, no matter the headlines, no matter the cost of mistakes made by others, we still have the power to rise above, to choose with wisdom, and to live with intention. And that, my friends, is where true strength lies. There is a power, a quiet kind of strength, in saying these four little words, I got it wrong. Now I know in politics those words are rare. In business those words are rare. And let's be honest, in our own lives those words can feel like climbing a mountain, because we are taught that mistakes are weakness, that failure is shame, that imperfection means we don't measure up. But I want to tell you right now that is not the truth. The truth is, admitting a mistake is not a weakness, it is courage, it is wisdom, it is growth in motion. Recently, when the White House had to step up and acknowledge a serious error in handling Donald Trump's tariffs, doubling up charges on goods from Japan, raising prices nearly 50%, that moment was more than a policy blunder. It was a reminder. A reminder that even the most powerful seat in the world can stumble. A reminder that ego-driven decisions can trip over their own weight. And most of all, a reminder that the strength to say we got this wrong can open the door to making things right. But here's where it gets interesting. Mistakes, left unacknowledged, don't just disappear. They grow, they multiply, they spread like cracks in a foundation. And before you know it, one misstep becomes a collapse. That's why confession, that's why accountability is not just noble, it is necessary. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you carried the weight of a mistake, hiding it, covering it, pretending it didn't happen? And didn't that weight feel heavier with each passing day? The burden doesn't lighten until you release it, until you own it, until you say out loud, yes, I messed up, but I'm willing to do better. What the White House did in that moment of admitting error was not only about tariffs and trade, it was about truth. Because truth, even painful truth, is always lighter than a lie. Let me give you a picture. Imagine a child learning to walk. They fall down again and again. But what do? They get back up. They don't pretend they didn't fall. They don't hide in shame. They rise, wobble, and keep going. And with every stumble they grow stronger. That is the beauty of mistakes when they are acknowledged. They become stepping stones, not stumbling blocks. But too often, our leaders, and yes, sometimes we ourselves, confuse denial with strength. We think if we just keep going, if we just push harder, no one will notice. But life has a way of noticing. Life has a way of calling us back to the truth. The tariffs are just one example. A miscalculation in Washington may feel far away, but the impact is right here. In the prices we pay, the choices we make, the stress we carry. And yet, there is also a hidden gift in that admission of error. It shows us that if the highest office can own up, then so can we. So I want to ask you, what mistake are you holding on to right now? What decision keeps you up at night? What regret keeps you silent? Maybe it's a relationship you mishandled. Maybe it's money you misused. Maybe it's words you spoke that you wish you could take back. Let me tell you this, there is freedom in the confession. There is healing in humility. There is strength in standing up and saying, yes, I got it wrong, but I am ready to make it right. Because the measure of a leader, and the measure of a human being, is never in whether or not we make mistakes. We will, every one of us. The true measure is in what we do next. Do we hide? Do we deny? Do we let ego rule the day? Or do we stand in truth, own the mistake, and take responsibility for the future? The White House may have admitted error reluctantly, under pressure, but the lesson remains powerful. Admitting a mistake does not diminish authority. It restores trust. It does not weaken leadership. It strengthens it. It says to the world, we are human too, and we are willing to learn. And that is what I want for you. Not perfection, not the illusion of having it all together, but the bravery to say, here is where I fell short. Here is where I can grow. Because when you release yourself from the fear of being wrong, you step into the freedom of being real. And when you are real, you can rise. So let us take this moment, this admission from the highest levels of power, as an invitation to drop the armor, an invitation to let go of the facade, an invitation to be honest with ourselves and each other. Because only when we admit the mistake can we create the miracle. And that, my friends, is the true power of owning our truth. Let's talk about something we cannot afford to ignore, the way mistakes at the top come crashing down on the people at the bottom. Because when a tariff is doubled, when a policy goes wrong, when a government miscalculates, it does not stay in the White House. It does not just live in some report or memo. No, it shows up in the aisles of the grocery store, in the bills on the kitchen table, in the choices families are forced to make every single day. When the White House admitted that Donald Trump's trade war had led to tariffs being stacked on Japanese goods twice, raising prices by nearly 50%, that wasn't just a number, that was a ripple. A ripple moving outward into the lives of millions of people who never sat at the table where the decision was made. Think about it. You're a father who owns a small repair shop. You rely on tools, parts, and materials shipped from overseas. Suddenly the cost of those items nearly doubles, not because the work has changed, not because demand has soared, but because of a political mistake. Now you're staring at your budget, asking yourself, do I raise my prices and risk losing customers? Do I cut corners, or do I swallow the cost and watch my profit vanish? That is not just economics, that is stress, that is sleepless nights, that is weight on the shoulders of an honest man trying to make a living. Or imagine you are a mother standing in a store with your child, reaching for school supplies or electronics, items now slapped with tariffs on top of tariffs, and you have to choose, do I buy what my child needs or do I wait? Do I stretch the credit card or do I say no? These are the choices everyday people are left with because of mistakes made far away from their lives, yet impacting them so deeply. And I want you to hear me, this is not about politics, this is about people. This is about the human cost of decisions made in haste, in pride, or without full understanding. It is about how a headline in Washington becomes heartbreak in someone's home. That is why accountability matters. That is why transparency matters. Because leadership is not just about standing behind a podium, it is about understanding that every choice has consequences. And when those choices touch food prices, rent, gas, medicine, and the basic cost of living, it is the people who pay the bill. But here's where I want to take us deeper. Yes, mistakes have impact, but we are not powerless in the face of them. You may not be able to stop a tariff. You may not be able to rewrite a policy, but you can choose how you respond to the pressures it creates. You can choose resilience. You can choose community. You can choose to say, we will not let the weight of their mistake break the spirit of our home. Because throughout history, ordinary people have carried the burden of extraordinary errors, wars, recessions, depressions. It was never the policymakers alone who felt the sting. It was farmers, teachers, factory workers, parents, but still they endured. Still they rose. Still they found a way to create life and love and meaning, even in the midst of hardship. And that is what I see in us now. Yes, tariffs are heavy. Yes, prices climb. Yes, mistakes from above press down. But I also see neighbors helping neighbors. I see families budgeting tighter but still giving. I see communities refusing to let division or difficulty steal their dignity. Because the truth is, no matter what decisions are made in the halls of power, the true strength of a nation is found in its people, in their ability to adapt, to overcome, and to rise again. So I ask you, not as a politician but as a fellow traveler in this human experience, how will you let these mistakes shape you? Will you allow them to steal your hope, or will you use them as fuel to get smarter, stronger, more resilient in the way you live your life? Because even when mistakes from above bring hardship, we can still choose wisdom below. We can still choose intention in how we spend, compassion in how we share, and faith in how we move forward. And maybe, just maybe, if enough of us demand it, these moments of error at the top will become turning points where leaders remember that real lives are attached to every policy, every tariff, every trade war. Turning points where decisions are made, not for ego but for people. So yes, mistakes impact us. They touch our wallets, our tables, our children, but they do not have to break us, because we are more than the sum of bad policies. We are more than the cost of tariffs. We are resilient, we are resourceful, we are capable of enduring hardship and still choosing to live with purpose. And when everyday people stand strong in the face of mistakes they did not make, that is when true power rises, not from the top down but from the ground up. Let me tell you something about anger and ego. They are powerful forces, but they are terrible decision makers. And when decisions are made from that place, from pride, from spite, from the need to win at all costs, the consequences do not stop with the person making them. They ripple outward. They ripple across families, across communities, across nations. Now, we've seen this in real time. The trade war that Donald Trump pushed forward was framed as strength, as toughness, as America first. But let's be honest, so many of those decisions were driven not by careful wisdom, but by ego, by the desire to appear unshakable, to never back down, to prove a point at any cost. And what happened? Tariffs piled up, mistakes multiplied, prices rose, and in the end, the very people those policies were supposed to protect were the ones carrying the heaviest burden. That is the ripple effect of decisions made in ego. The ripples don't stop at the stone that was thrown. They spread out into the water, touching everything in their path. Think about your own life. How many times have you made a choice out of anger? Maybe you sent that text you wish you could take back. Maybe you said words in a heated moment that built a wall between you and someone you loved. Maybe you spent money just to prove something, or walked away from an opportunity because your pride said, "They don't deserve me." And later you realized the cost of that decision didn't end with you. It touched the people around you. It shaped relationships, finances, futures. That's the thing about ego-driven choices. They echo far louder than we expect. In the case of tariffs, one decision made in haste created a cascade, a ripple that doubled tariffs on goods from Japan, raising costs by nearly 50%. And from there, the ripples grew. Businesses struggled, consumers paid more, trust in leadership weakened, all because decisions were made from a place of posturing instead of wisdom. Now, I'm not just talking about politics, I'm talking about life. Because ego is not confined to the Oval Office. Ego lives in all of us, and when we let it take the driver's seat, we risk more than just embarrassment. We risk hurting the very people we love, the very future we're trying to build. But here is the gift. When you recognize the ripple effect, you realize the incredible power you hold. Every choice you make sends ripples. Words spoken in kindness ripple outward just as much as words spoken in anger. A single act of generosity ripples into a family, a community, a world. The energy you pour into your decisions, whether it's ego or empathy, doesn't just stay with you. It moves, it spreads, it multiplies. So when leaders choose ego, nations feel it. And when you choose ego in your own life, your circle feels it. But when you choose humility, when you choose patience, when you choose wisdom, those ripples move too. And they move in ways that can heal instead of harm. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine throwing a rock into a still lake. Watch how the ripples spread farther and farther until they touch every edge of the water. That's what decisions do. That's what tariffs did. That's what anger in your own life does. You may think it's just one moment, just one choice, just one word. But those ripples travel. They reach places you never intended them to go. And so we must ask ourselves, are we throwing rocks of anger, of ego, of pride, or are we choosing to throw stones of compassion, of clarity, of love? Because both will ripple, both will spread, but only one will create the kind of world we want to live in. The White House admitting their mistake was a moment of humility, but it came only after the ripples had already touched millions of lives. That is the cost of ego. That is the cost of leading from anger instead of wisdom. So I want to challenge you, the next time you feel that fire of anger rising, the next time your ego whispers, "Don't let them win," the next time pride tells you to prove your worth, pause. Pause and ask yourself, if I throw this stone, what ripples will it create? Who will it touch? What will it cost? Because decisions made in ego may feel powerful in the moment, but their ripples often carry pain. And decisions made in humility may feel small at first, but their ripples carry healing. The trade war showed us what happens when ego rules: chaos, confusion, cost. But your life can show something different. Your choices can show what happens when love rules, when patience leads, when wisdom speaks louder than pride, because the ripples are real, and the choice of what you send into the world is always yours. I have learned something in life that I want you to hold close. Every setback carries a seed of opportunity, a seed of growth, a seed of change. But here's the challenge. Most of us never look for it because we're too busy staring at the loss. Now, when the White House admitted they made a mistake in Donald Trump's trade war, doubling tariffs on goods from Japan, driving up prices nearly 50%, it felt like one more burden, one more wrong turn, one more weight added to the shoulders of ordinary people. And it was, families paid more, businesses struggled, trust in leadership faltered. But hidden inside that mistake was also an opening for us to see how fragile decisions at the top really are, an opening for us to ask better questions, demand more accountability, and recognize our own power in shaping the future. Because here is the truth. Setbacks reveal what success often hides. When things are going well, we coast. We don't ask why. We don't challenge the process. We accept. we nod, we move on. But when a mistake disrupts our comfort, when tariffs rise, when costs spike, when leadership falters, suddenly we are awake. Suddenly we are paying attention. Suddenly we are forced to ask, is this the best we can do? Is this the leadership we deserve? Is this the direction we want to go? And that is where the opportunity lives. In the questions we would never have asked if everything had gone smoothly. Think about your own life. Some of your greatest growth, your deepest lessons, did not come when everything was perfect. They came when something fell apart. They came when a job was lost, when a relationship ended, when a dream didn't go the way you planned. In that moment it felt like failure, but looking back you can see, the setback was a setup for clarity, a setup for strength, a setup for a new direction you never would have discovered otherwise. That is the hidden gift of mistakes, even political mistakes. They show us what needs to change. They show us what we can no longer ignore. They wake us up. So while the tariffs hurt, while the prices sting, while the White House fumbles, we can still ask ourselves, what can this teach us? What can this moment open in us? What new path can we carve from here? Maybe it teaches us the importance of paying attention to policies that affect our daily lives. Maybe it inspires us to use our voices more, to write, to vote, to demand leaders who think beyond ego and consider the human cost. Maybe it challenges us to be more resourceful in our own lives, to budget smarter, to support local businesses, to find creative ways of thriving even in the face of higher costs. Because if there is one thing history has shown us, it is that people are resilient. We adapt, we innovate, we rise from ashes again and again. And sometimes we don't rise in spite of the setback, we rise because of it. I think about the farmers who face drought and learn to diversify their crops. I think about entrepreneurs who were denied loans and created entire industries from scratch. I think about families who lost jobs in one generation and sent their children to college in the next. Every setback carried a seed, and when they tended to that seed with resilience and hope, it grew into something greater than they ever imagined. So here's what I want you to take with you. Do not despise the setback. Do not waste energy wishing it hadn't happened. Instead, ask yourself, where is the seed? Where is the lesson? Where is the opportunity for me to grow stronger, wiser, freer because of this? The White House may have made a mistake, but we can make meaning from it. The tariffs may have cost us, but we can gain clarity from them. The leadership may have faltered, but we can choose to lead our own lives with intention and vision. Because in the end, a setback is not a stop sign. It is a detour. And sometimes the detour takes you to a place better than where you thought you were going. So when you look at the rising prices, when you hear the political spin, when you feel the weight of mistakes made by others, remember this: hidden inside every burden is a breakthrough. Hidden inside every mistake is a miracle waiting to unfold. Hidden inside every setback is an opportunity to rise higher than you were before. And the only question left is, will you see it? Will you tend to the seed? Will you allow the setback to become your setup? Because if you do, you will discover what so many before you have learned. The setback is never the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new one.
And so here we are, standing in the middle of a moment that feels both fragile and powerful. The White House admitted they made a major mistake in this trade war. And yes, the tariffs were doubled, the prices rose, the people felt it. But let me tell you something, the mistake itself is not the story. The real story is what we do with the mistake. Because every mistake carries a hidden message. Every failure whispers a truth we were not ready to hear. And sometimes it takes being humbled, it takes being wrong, it takes standing in front of the world and saying we messed up to unlock a door that was closed for too long. That is where change begins. Now I want you to think about this. When leaders misstep, the easy thing to do is to point fingers. The easy thing is to blame. The easy thing is to let anger harden our hearts. But what if instead we chose to see mistakes as invitations? Invitations to grow, to learn, to realign. Because the only thing worse than making a mistake is refusing to learn from it. Let's be clear. The American people deserve accountability. They deserve leaders who pay attention before the pain, not after it. They deserve policies that put people first, not power, not pride, not politics. And when the White House says they made a major mistake, our job is to hold them accountable. But it is also to hold ourselves accountable. Because change is not only about them, it's about us, about the way we vote, the way we stay engaged, the way we demand better, not just louder. You see, a tariff can raise the price of goods, but it cannot raise the price of your voice. Your voice is still free. Your power is still real. And if this mistake has taught us anything, it's that every decision has a ripple. Every choice leaves a mark. Every leader's policy eventually touches someone's kitchen table. And that someone could be you, your neighbor, your child, or your grandchild. So the question becomes, what are we going to do with this knowledge? Will we let it pass as just another headline, just another political blunder, just another round of finger-pointing and outrage? Or will we take it as a moment to pause, to demand smarter choices, to remind every person in power that we are watching, we are paying attention, and we will not be quiet when our lives, our jobs, our future is on the line? Because here is the truth. Mistakes are only fatal if we allow them to be final. A wrong turn can still lead you home if you're willing to turn back. And that is what leadership is supposed to be. Not perfection, not pride, but the courage to correct course. I believe the American spirit is bigger than tariffs, bigger than trade wars, bigger than any single mistake. We are not defined by policies written on paper, but by the resilience written in our hearts. And when the system falters, when the leaders stumble, when the White House admits they got it wrong, it is our chance to rise, to push for better, to insist on wisdom instead of haste, to fight not with anger but with conviction. Let this moment remind you that democracy is not a spectator sport. It is not something you watch on the news and complain about. It is something you live, something you breathe, something you carry with you when you step into a voting booth, when you call your representatives, when you teach your children the difference between power and responsibility. So tonight I leave you with this: a mistake was made. Yes, but you are not powerless, you are not voiceless, and you are not alone. Together we can take even the darkest chapters and rewrite them into something brighter. Together we can turn a blunder into a lesson, and a lesson into a change. Because no tariff, no trade war, no headline is greater than the will of a people who refuse to be ignored. And that, my friends, is the real story here. Not just that the White House admitted a mistake, but that we, you and I, hold the power to make sure mistakes like this don't happen again. That is the truth. That is the calling. That is the hope. And if we can hold on to that, we can rise.